This is a word nearly every American knows, and yet every time I use the word in the UK, I feel like I have to explain myself a bit. Some Brits would have heard the word from American TV shows, but most still wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what it means without guessing. The word, of course, is sophomore, as in the dreaded sophomore slump, or comeback of the year. But what exactly is a sophomore? Why do Americans say it? And where did it even come from? Well, the answer surprised even me. My name is Evan Edinger, and while researching the answer to these questions, I accidentally stumbled across something much bigger about how Americans and Brits talk about school differently. And of course, if you want sophomore of this content, subscribe. So let's cut to the chase. What is up with this word? Well, the word is sophomore, and though it would have traditionally been 3 syllables, aka sophomore, these days it's pretty solidly a 2-syllable word, at least where I'm from. Sophomore. There are 2 distinct parts of your life where you could describe yourself as a sophomore. First is your second year of high school, and second is your second year of university. Okay, that's a bit confusing. Simply put, the naming convention for years of study in US high schools is the same as the naming convention for in colleges and universities. And it goes like this. Freshman year, your first year, sophomore year as your second, junior year as your third, and senior year as your 4th and final year of study. In Britain, the country that likes to bully Americans for being literal with their words like sidewalk and horseback riding, they interestingly use a very simple system. First year, second year, third year. Boring! They do use the term freshers to refer to the first year of university, where everyone mostly goes out drinking all the time, but the word sophomore hasn't quite crossed the pond. What? Let me rephrase that. The word sophomore hasn't quite crossed the pond again. You see, the word sophomore does in fact come from England. They just bloody forgot about it. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the word sophomore first appeared in the 17th century. Second-year students at Oxford and Cambridge were known as sophomores, or sophomores, a compound word that combined the Greek word for wisdom, sophistes, with the Greek word moros, meaning foolish. A sophomore is therefore a wise fool. Quite apt, isn't it? That really fits the period of school where you're a sophomore. You're no longer a first-year freshman with no idea about anything, so you may consider yourself wise. But in the grand scheme of things, you're still pretty early in your academic career, so a wise fool. Basically, a good example of this spot on the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know, at the beginning, you're like, oh, I must not know anything. And then when you learn a little bit, you're like, oh, I know this. And then the more you learn, you realize, oh shit, this is deep. I'm 14, this is deep. A lot of early American universities, like Harvard, based their naming conventions off the systems of Cambridge and Oxford. And then many more American universities kept that convention, not realizing that back across the pond, the term sophomore never really expanded too much. It kind of just stayed being an Oxbridge thing. And it does make sense that of all the US school year terminology, sophomore would be the one to confuse most Brits, as the other 3 have simple English roots. Freshman? I don't need to explain that. It's easy to understand. Junior, senior, they know and use those words regularly. You have junior doctors in the UK, senior assistants, but their use as a term in school as a group is very much just a North American sort of thing. Sort of like how in Britain they invented the apple pie, but in America we have an expression, it's as American as apple pie. It's truly ironic in a way. And that disconnect pops up in weird places. I see complaints in the Duolingo subreddit all the time from people angry that in order to learn the language of their choice, they must first learn the American English terms like freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. But like, hey, who would complain about getting to learn more words? Definitely not you watching this video on words. You're thriving, all right? But even though sophomore has Greek roots, it's actually a bit of an outlier. Most American school terms that they don't use in Britain aren't Greek, they're Latin. But weirdly enough, America does have a weird fascination with Greek too. I mean, just look at fraternities and sororities, Latin words for Greek organizations that refer to themselves on campus as Greek life.
Phi Psi or Theta Chi. Theta Chi. Phi Delta.
Welcome to Greek life at UBC.
You know, fraternities like Tau Kappa Epsilon and Phi Beta Sigma, which sounds like someone desperately trying to get down with Gen Z. Oh, I'm skibbiting all over her cap as she gets my Riz. Let's move on, all right? I'm not trying to teach people how to be cool like me. You'll never learn. Greek brotherhood and sisterhood programs exemplify the famous Greek traits of connection, community, and crashing your local economy. These sorts of clubs come off as incredibly foreign in the UK, but it's part of a broader pattern in American schools. Names and traditions that feel ancient, or rather are at least ancient sounding, so at least the organization can feel older than your country, even when it's not. Slight tangent, speaking of clubs, even though the word club does exist in American English and English, well, in the US, we do prefer a more Latin-sounding and flowery version of the word club when it comes to school, extracurricular. We just can't help ourselves sometimes. Why would you want to say one syllable, club, when you can say extracurricular activity 10 syllables for the act of one. Club, extracurricular activity. America, come on now. I actually joined every single extracurricular I could in high school, not because it would help me in university or get a better placement, just because I wanted to be in the yearbook as many times as possible. I would sneak into different things and be like, it's me. And I'd put my arm over someone so they wouldn't be able to Photoshop me out. They did. They would just have a ghost arm. So my ghost arm is in quite a few photos in the yearbook. But the interesting thing is, like the words fraternity and sorority, most US school words, in contrast to British ones, come from Latin. Getting in trouble with the teacher is stressful enough, sure, but being sent to the principal's office, whew, that's next level, all right? The word principal comes from the Latin principalis, meaning first in rank. And in the UK, you're far more likely to hear the word headmaster. I feel like if Dumbledore had been the principal, it wouldn't have sounded quite as magical, even if the word master does also have roots in Latin. These next two terms that exist in American schools but don't exist in the UK do a really good job of showing the difference between how each culture treats education. In the US, the valedictorian is the highest ranking student of the graduating class, and the salutatorian is the second highest ranking student. These two students usually give speeches to their graduating class, and it's quite an honor. Valedictorian, the word, comes from the Latin valedicere, which is vale, farewell, and dicere, to say. So it quite literally just means to say farewell. Salutatorian, on the other hand, comes from the Latin salutatio from salutare, meaning to greet. Did you ever wonder why the first speech at graduation is given by the salutatorian? Well, it's in the name. They're there to greet everyone, while the valedictorian finishes it off with a farewell speech. But in the UK, especially in their high schools, called secondary schools, you would never even get the chance to know who was top in your class because they don't really have any sort of cumulative grading system similar to the GPA or grade point average. Sure, you get an overall rank depending on how you did, but they don't have any way of figuring out who's the top of the top set, who's the number one. It's just not a thing over here. I actually don't like that, as I kind of like the inherent competitiveness built into the US system. Of course, it would be an American to tell you that he prefers the system that makes education into a who's the best or who's the smartest competition. I know. But you're probably asking, well, Evan, did you get valedictorian? Absolutely not. My goal was always to maximize my grade while minimizing my effort so I could have more time to play video games. That being said, to maintain my scholarship in university, I actually had to finish each year with a GPA of higher than a 3.7, which means my average across all of my classes had to be higher than a 93%. And once I graduated with this GPA, my degree in math and statistics was given a high honor. I graduated magna cum laude, though that was not how I thought it was pronounced at the time. I would say I graduated magna cum laude, which, when I said to a Brit, sounded more like I got around quite a lot in college. Oh, you're a magna cum laude? Just hopefully one American watches this video and goes, oh, it's laude. Graduating in the US has three distinct Latin honors for university: cum laude, magna cum laude, and summa cum laude. Very simply, with praise, with great praise, and with the highest praise. That's some of the highest praise you can get. These Latin awards were used throughout universities in medieval Europe as part of Latin language graduation ceremonies, but it was, yet again, Harvard that introduced the terms to the US and systemized and popularized them into the three official tiers Americans know of today, depending on their alma mater. Alma mater, a word I have touched on this YouTube channel before, is just a fancy way of saying where you went to university or where you went to school, and it's Latin for nourishing mother. Because, you know, this is your university, I guess. Throughout all of these words, there is an interesting through line. A lot of this comes from early US universities copying from Ivy League schools, copying from Oxford and Cambridge, but I think the reason it stuck around so much in America is because things having classical sounding names just gives more of an air of prestige, more pomp and circumstance, if you will. America culturally enjoys making a big deal out of everything. I had a 6th grade graduation, for instance, a ceremony most Brits find preposterous. Culturally, it just makes sense to be proud of where you went to university, your alma mater. Be proud of your degree with magna cum laude awards, and be proud of your time in Greek life. The UK as a culture is generally a lot more likely to lovingly talk down on their university, or their city, or their country. Not their local football team, sure, but usually the overly proud demeanor that Americans have about pretty much everything is seen as quite cringe over here in the UK, where they're more reserved about everything. And from my experience of Britain, unless you went to Oxford or Cambridge, no one here even cares where you went to university, and they're all kind of viewed as one and the same, just university. Whereas in the States, there exists, just like in high school, that ever-present competitive element. Oh, where did you go to university? Oh, you went to Tyrone? Isn't that like the redheaded stepchild of Rutgers? In the UK, I can upload a video titled, I visited the worst city in the UK, linked above, and have most comments be from Brits going, oh, I bet this is about the shithole where I live. There exists a state of pride of being not proud in Britain. There is a joy in not showing too much exuberance and pride in anything. It's just really baked into the culture here. So it does make sense that they're not going to use as much flowery language as opposed to Americans, where we just do love to big ourselves up. Traditionally, Brits just don't like taking themselves too seriously. But if you want to take your online data privacy seriously, you should probably consider using today's video sponsor, mkii. Have you noticed a large increase in spam emails and spam phone calls recently? I know the US is having a huge problem with spam calls at the moment. That's probably because your email address and phone number have shown up on far too many shady lists online, being bought and sold by online data brokers. You have the right to request they delete this data from their servers, but with the sheer number of them popping up over and over and how long that admin takes, a service like mkii just makes sense. Mkii monitor the internet for any uses of your private information, and once they find a broker with your data, they swiftly send out a deletion request, resulting in less spam for you. Spam? I bloody hate spam! Since signing up to mkii, they have already sent over 600 different data removal requests on my behalf, saving me, according to their calculations, over 400 hours of time had I sent these requests myself. If you have been inundated with a lot of spam recently, it might be worth giving mkii a shot, especially considering they've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, and because if you use my link in the description, mkii.com/EvanEdinger, you can get 60% off. So, thank you mkii for sponsoring. Now, let me wrap this up. This video is another example of me working on a separate video and then getting distracted and taking one segment out that I found the most interesting. I think most of my videos these days are the result of me desperately seeking easier videos to make so I have more time to work on the bigger ones, and then ending up tunneling deep into one subject until, well, now it's a big video on its own. It just keeps happening. I don't know how to stop it. Like with my video on jellied eels, which started as a simple taste test and somehow turned into a mini documentary seeking to answer the question of what happened to jellied eels, as their disappearance from London is not for the reason that I expected. Plus, it gave me a way of showing off some beautiful compositions around the River Thames. Go check out that video if you missed it, and catch the eels while they're still fresh, man. If you're happy that the country went down the drain, when you see a member of the Conservative Party, then you can explain. You were the second in your class, and so it's time to give a speech. Raise your right hand to your head, and it's time to salute a Tory, and that was a reach of a pun. I'm sorry. That's it. Oh, Labour's no better, are they? Bye-bye. End of the vid.